board must determine that approximately 4,231 provisional ballots in the following categories should be counted or rejected. I'll start with A, 1,337 not registered.
My name is Dora Rose, and I'd like permission to address the board before you.
Sure. You filled out would you state your name and address? You did fill out
I'm Dora Rose, 22475 Collier Road in Shaker Heights, and I organized voter protection for the Democrats in this last election, and also in 2004. We had 500 observers out at the polls, and we collected incident reports on particular circumstances when people had trouble voting. I compared our incident reports to the list of provisionals that are being rejected, and there are 19 names that I would like to ask you to look at again and reconsider, because I think mistakes may have been made. I don't know how you want to handle this, whether you want me to just read the names into the record and then you can go back and look at them separately.
What, as well as one, have you seen the agenda? You have the agenda before you, right?
Yes.
Today's agenda. Under what category would the 19 names fall?
Most of them fall under not registered, and we believe they are properly registered. There's been some problem with their registration.
Not most. Of the 19, how many would fall into category A?
I wasn't planning to do anything like this, so I haven't, but I'll tell you in a minute.
The only reason I say that is you may be able to table voting on non-registered, so we get that clarified.
Okay. $14 of them. Okay. 2 are wrong precinct.
No, don't worry about it. 14 not registered, right?
Yes.
Okay. The other 4, what category?
5. 2 are wrong precinct.
Okay, so that's
One is
E.
One is missing ID.
Okay.
One is VAV, which I assume is voted a absentee ballot.
Yes.
Is that correct? And that actually is just a question associated with that individual. And the last is actually somebody who cast provisional but isn't on the list at all. And we can't understand why. We know that she cast a provisional ballot, but she doesn't appear anywhere on the list, whether accepted or rejected. Well, I want to make sure her ballot didn't just get lost somewhere. So that's sort of a separate issue. I have the incident reports here. I don't know whether you want me to go through some of them. Many of them have to do with a person coming to the polls and saying, how could I possibly not be registered? I voted in the primary, I voted here for 10 years, 15 years, whatever.
I have no problem, Mr. Chairman. But you're saying that the vast majority, 14, not registered.
Yes.
1, no ID.
1 missing ID, and we know that she had an ID on her and presented it.
Okay, that's 15.
1 who...
I mean, here's Dora's out of the problem to back up to just the missing ID.
Yeah.
That would have had to been filled out on the envelope, am I correct?
That's correct.
And so if the voter failed to place that ID, even though they had it with them, or...
Well, we don't know exactly what happened. She actually returned to her home to get identification, came back with it, so it was a sort of a big deal at the polling place. It was a Cleveland Metropolitan Housing Authority receipt with her name and address on it. She was 79 years old. She wanted very much for her vote to count, and I'm fairly certain that she did whatever was instructed, but I obviously haven't seen the envelope, so I don't know exactly what appears on the envelope.
So do we really know, how do we know that that was rejected?
It's on your list of rejected ballots, and
it's
the
on the
reason...
list of the individual ones. Okay.
And your reason is missing identification.
Is there any way we can retrieve that envelope?
They're all here.
Okay.
No, they're all down in the provisional room. We haven't broken down alphabetically, so I didn't want to break
registers and everything?
Yes.
Would you give us the opportunity to do that, let us move on with the agenda?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't want to hold this up. I can give you my list, and we can make copies of the incident reports, and this is, I just want to make sure that these individuals aren't voted on and rejected permanently.
No.
So,
We can suspend voting on those issues until, on those items, we not, until we get clarity on.
okay,
If you could just give the list to Mike DeFranco.
absolutely. Thanks very much.
Mike, you should have probably staff pull that, that way you're here for the other items.
Just the ones that are circled.
And may I address the board as well regarding provisionals, not absentees? Thank you. Adele Eisner, Hickman Heights, Ohio. I did not have the benefit of incident reports and from election protection, etc. So but I do have the benefit of my having sat in the Candidate and Voter Services Department. Under the rules, which Jackie Maiden gave me the first time I entered when I was allowed access, after the first weekend that I was not allowed access, that was on Tuesday. I didn't come the Monday of the court order, but I did come Tuesday, and I did get a list of rules, and I was asked not to talk to people, etc. And so I did make arrangements to talk to some managers, and again, Jackie was excellent, and I spoke with Emily in the department. Not wanting to obstruct the process, I didn't want to stop anyone from working for me specifically in handling the envelopes, the provisional envelopes, but I did request of the managers and money. I saw in one case, one of the first times that I asked someone, well, will you just pick up a stack and under the category of missing information? And that particularly caught my attention because the first time someone actually, one of the workers, picked up the envelopes, which I did not touch, and lifted up the sheet, I saw the name Lisa Miller. And all that was on Lisa Miller's envelope was a note. It was her name, and a note under other that said she does not trust electronic voting machines. The logical assumption, and I have discussed this with Mike, the logical assumption there could be, but I was unable to check it out, is that here's a woman who walked into the polls, possibly signed in. I am not saying she did for sure. She should have been marked irregular ballot, possibly. And she said, give me paper. The poll worker, not having complete understanding, as I've understood over and over and over again, that poll workers were very confused about provisional ballots. And the poll worker, not having an understanding and not knowing what to do with it, stuck her ballot into a provisional envelope, did not think or know to write 2 words or 1 word, regular, or 2 words, regular ballot. And so there she was in a provisional envelope, and she is on the rejection list. Because I have not been able to get a wide enough sample, that's because I did not want to stop the workers to pick up envelopes with ballots in them for me. I did note a couple, and I can't find in my notes, 2 other brief examples. But what I'd like to do at this point, and I did ask Mike at that point and Jackie for an opinion from the prosecutor regarding my ability to see the envelopes, particularly in that category, because I have a pretty reasonably educated idea that there were some under missing information that again were due to poll workers not thoroughly understanding what to do. And I have the prosecutor's opinion here, which is due to basically, it talks about my not being able to take physical custody of the envelopes. with the ballots in them. I don't want physical custody of the envelopes with the ballots in them. But I certainly would like a copy of the envelopes. If an address needs to be redacted, that's fine, but I would like a copy of the envelopes of all of the missing information provisionals so that I can go back and see. There was a Patrick, and I can't remember his last name, Alea or Macaulay in CVS, who was very helpful in, he served as my liaison for like little 10-minute periods. And he and I began calling these ones with these odd little amorphous notes. So I'd like to get further information about that and, again, reserve my right to amend the election results within the 80-day period. I also need clarification about that 80 days. I don't know if that's from the time of the election or from the time of certification. And so I would like the right to get copies. I don't want to touch the ballots. I have not touched any ballots for the many days I've been here. But I would like copies of them. Also, I'd like to make a statement that I did, again, Mike, you couldn't have been better. Thank you. Even during the non-access, when I wasn't allowed access, Mike did give me updates on how many provisionals they had handled, whether or not the department was working, and I really appreciate that. And he is the person who got me the prosecutor's opinion. I don't know if you folks need a copy of this or not, but it's basic. Would you like a copy? If I could get, I have it in my computer, so there you go. It's basically based on my not taking custody of ballots, which I have not asked for. I would like to say that one of the things that I discussed with Mike was that about the poll worker training, and Mike has some excellent suggestions about possibly making a separate provisional station at each polling location. Two of my suggestions from this one of the largest voting districts in the state might be emphasizing or working toward same-day registration as there are in some other states. It would certainly make CVS's department a lot easier, wouldn't it? And it would assure far more voters being able to vote, as we would hope that voters can. Mike also pointed out to me that I questioned him about the not registered, and one of the things I will say in Mike's stead, that I know that the ballot department made many efforts given the limits of things coming in with mistakes, possible mistakes from poll workers who were untrained in this whole area. And Mike did say that they did look a few different ways. Per Dr. Robbins' suggestion about the many permutations that might not be able to be found in the registration base, Mike's department did go back and try to cross-check people they couldn't find with bad spelling by birth date, and they found about 40 or 60, someplace, which I think is excellent, but it still might not have caught everybody just because they didn't have enough information. And I also, pointing that out about the poll worker training, and if we're going to have provisional ballots, the absolute clear need for provisional ballots, for training about provisional ballots. Mike did point out that every call that he got, approximately 100 in the CVS department on election day, from poll workers or election judges who could not find people in the voter registration base. For every single one of those, am I quoting you correctly, the CVS department found them in the voter registration base, and they were okay. Which means, again, I'm not saying the poll workers were bad. I'm saying that there is a sore need for poll workers not to get flustered, and to this, many people are calling HB3 the voter suppression bill, which requires the IDs. I think that we need to it's another hurdle that we have to climb over, and making sure that everybody does get their ballot counted. I do want to point out, Mike did give me the list of fails, and there are also, regarding possible poll worker training or something else going on at the polls, because I've been here so much and my time and working at a paying job, I've been really not having enough chance to go through the list that you have provided me. He's also provided me a disc with the list. But a couple of things that, as I just spot checked those, I went through and I saw some areas where there seemed to be a real spike in provisional ballots, and I think that that really needs to be looked at. Possibly 4 recommendations about poll worker training, going back and finding out what happened. One that I remember was Bedford or Bedford Heights. One was Rocky River, and one was South Euclid, where there just seemed to be, as compared with everybody else, it seemed like there were an inordinate number of provisional ballots where the percentage that failed didn't really change a whole significant amount, as opposed to those that were okay. Just the raw numbers of provisionals seemed way off.
Well, I think the percentage also changed with Dallas. I think that compared to 2004 in the suburbs, and I think you're absolutely correct, is
and I didn't do a spot check. I did this at 6 o'clock in the morning.
well, it went down. It actually went down from 31% to 23.26%, and went down from 39% to 31% in the city of Cleveland. So overall, when we consider the absentee vote totals, we went down 7% on the rejection basis. In 2004, we rejected 34. In 2006, it was 27% overall.
Right.
However, as I noticed, you also mentioned in certain suburbs, and I'm not sure what that had to do with the intensity of the race out there, or the any local issues that might have happened, but there were more provisionals voted in those.
In certain suburbs, and I haven't named all of them, and again, because of my, starting out at 6:30 in the morning and then getting home from here at 8 o'clock at night or 7:30, etc., and also trying to run a business. It's just been, my time has been short. But
what we might do though is we might ask the director to do a comparison and maybe just kind of check with some of the booth officials out there why we had a greater number of provisionals this time than last time.
right, it's the percentage of provisionals to votes cast, not the percentage of failed. So, and I would also, as I stand here noticing, I would also like to, in this time period of 80 days, and I would like to get the copies of the envelope so I can check the notes, possibly suggest that a logging system for those notes be done so that we don't go through all this convoluted stuff. That possibly a citizens panel, not just one person like the public monitor, etc., but a small citizens panel be called for and come forth where we might be able to talk to the poll workers in those areas, not to point fingers at them, but I think that everybody certainly everybody here, almost to a fault, almost to a T, the vast majority of people I observed working here as temporary staff or managers, I could not have been more dedicated to trying to do a good job in a very confusing situation, because there was not a general overall process vision driving it. However, I would like to see a citizens panel be able to also talk with some of these poll workers so that we might be able to make some, and possibly with Mike, to make some good suggestions about that area of training. And I will rest.
One of the things that we have talked about at Dallas, sending out a questionnaire to our poll some people that would not be comfortable in that format, that they may be comfortable in filling out a questionnaire. And I think that having some type of a citizens panel or the monitor can help us design that questionnaire to mail out to the booth officials, I think would be very appropriate.
And review it. I mean, I think a group of citizens, there are so many citizens who have tried to get active in the process. And sometimes it's hurtful, sometimes it's hard, really hard. Sometimes one has to develop a really thick skin, as I developed over this time of just trying to gain access as a legal observer. And eventually it might work out. However, to invite some citizens into the process who will not point fingers. Citizens are not bad people, but who can help make suggestions.
I didn't mean to imply that.
Great.
What I will say, though, is if you ask booth officials to attend some type of a meeting with some type of citizen panel, they may be comfortable in doing that and would refuse to do that.
I'm talking in like small group format, and that could all be worked out at a later time. I'm talking about like what do you call those? Like just a small group format where we could actually ask for their input. They must have suffered too if they didn't know what they were doing. I just looked at my notes and I wanted to, regarding the provisionals, and let's see, I was planning to have a report typed for you, but I'm sorry I didn't have time. I do want to say that during the provisional handling, their first few days when Mike, whatever, not Mike, when Patrick was helping me, it was very hard to determine who was making the final decisions on the provisionals. And again, on provisionals in question, it was 3 days when I was asking the same questions. Mike was out sick. I certainly understand that. And so there was a lot of confusion about who was making the final decisions, and not until Mike got back was it clarified and he took ownership of that. So I think that is another area that this board really needs to look at, that those procedures should be written down, and when the manager of the CVS department is sick, he should be able to be sick and get well, and someone else should be able to carry on here. Thank you.
I think, Mr. Chairman, before leaves, Mr. Ordini, 2 questions. The 80-day period begins when?
When we certify it.
From the certification, so we begin tomorrow. Now, with respect to the request for copies of the envelope, is that a problem?
Evidently, my colleague's here. I have to confer with her. She wrote the legal opinion.
Okay,
So I don't know. Get back to you on that.
that's fine.
Who can I call for that?
Today.
Pardon me?
Yeah.
You'll have that opinion today.
During this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
If I can comment on the reason for the spike of some of the provisionals, a lot of those, House Bill 3 now requires us to, any voter that receives an acknowledgement notice for new registration, change of address, change of name, if that comes back to the board as undeliverable, we are to mark those in the poll books now as they must go to provisional ballot. And a lot of the apartment building areas where the postmen just for some reason don't like delivering those cards, we get a high volume of those cards back, and those people are marked in the poll book as must go provisional. Especially the Bedford Heights one. That's the one I noticed when I printed the poll books up.
We should talk to the post office about that. If we feel that we're getting an amount back, we should have directors, we should have somebody contact the postmaster and discuss this problem with them, because that could generate a high number of provisional ballots. Yes, that might explain Bedford, because I have a hard time thinking Rocky River has a large, well, they do have a large number of apartments also.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not completely convinced that that's the reason for all of those.
It's part of the problem.
Yeah, I mean,
okay, need to register. What, can you explain that
That is
category to me?
That's a voter from another county in Ohio that moves to Cuyahoga County and votes a provisional. We just need to get a registration of that person. That we just queue them up in the program, so I send them a registration card so we can have a registration
Okay,
card
so they were previously registered and you were able to verify that.
within another county in Ohio.
Which in prior years, we would have been able to do this, am I correct? And the
Correct.
voters would not have been able to vote.
Correct.
So, that's, about 685 that we actually picked up. I'm
Also, what Ms. Eisner was talking about with the regular ballots that were voted on election day, I believe we sent down, it was like 955 that were marked on the provisional envelopes as regular ballot from the polls. We didn't even look at those as a provisional. We sent them right down to be counted in their correct ward and precinct.
I stand corrected, Mike, because we didn't have any of those.
No, we had them, but we've already
Here.
taken care of those. So they're counted in with the regular okays.
They were counted in the regular okay? So
Yes.
there's no split out like there was in 2004?
No, we did them as we were going. We were sending the registration cards out, so we didn't forget.
I was wondering with the 10-day period, how many people turned?
Good question. There was a total of 8 people that show here with ID, and none of those people needed to show ID. They all showed ID on election day.
So that was it?
That was it, 8
Not
people.
the whole thing? Wow.
And they all showed ID on election day, so they didn't.
They didn't even
have
need to be
come
here,
down.
yes. Correct.
I'm not sure whether that's good or bad.
Or possibly, excuse me, but possibly it might point out the need for better education of the voter at the polls of what they need to do. Very clear, concise.
Well, they're all given a form at the polls with all the rules when they vote a provisional. Plus, we sent out the countywide mailer to have the ID requirements on it also.
We're rejecting 27% of our county absentee votes for one reason or another. Didn't we already cover those?
This is what we're coming down to, 27% as part of this one.
These are absentee
No,
provisionals.
provisionals.
Yes, that's what
But
we're.
I'm looking at the AV totals down here. Those ones that we previously dealt with.
No,
No,
these are just provisionals, not,
not absolutely.
these are people that voted in office provisionally.
No, I'm looking at my summary sheet here. It has 12% rejected. What they call absentee vote. These people that voted a provisional ballot because and an absentee vote.
For the 11s,
On the summary sheet,
where it says VAV,
No, what he's talking about is your AV totals, okay? And you have a 12% rejection rate on that.
right,
Correct me if I'm wrong, but those are the people who came in and voted a provisional absentee ballot here at the Board of Elections because they had moved and did not change their name or address prior to the 30 days.
or a nursing home provisional.
oh, okay. So, did they vote an absentee vote here
Yes.
as a provisional?
As a provisional, yes, because they were changing their name, or address, or both.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'm going to raise another question here, just because it sticks out to me. The percentage is very low, but wrong precinct, 26, don't we check that precinct, for the voter when they come in and give their name and address? Because
Yes.
we actually generate the ballot. How can they have a wrong precinct?
Yes.
No, he said that these are the ones that voted here.
No, these are the absentees that voted in-house, and there's nothing but operator error there. That's the only way I can tell you that one.
So it's an operator error that,
They coded the wrong ballot.
so there's 26 people that came in here, took the effort to come down. Is there any way that we can reduce that down to 0, Mike? I have a real problem with that.
I agree with you 100%. That's possible too. We could dig down farther on this. This could be possibly nursing homes that when they gave us their provisional, but even still, they should still get the same right ballot. No. There's no way out of this one. It's operator error.
And then the other one that I have is not registered. Somebody comes down and votes an absentee. Don't we check their registration?
Not a provisional.
Not a provisional.
All provisionals are checked post-election.
Okay.
You can't turn them away if they're not registered, you still have to give them a ballot.
A lot of those people are demanding they vote.
Okay.
That's this call.
They're not registered.
Okay. MID, is that missing information?
That's missing ID according to House Bill 3.
Well, the one I have a problem with is wrong precinct. I don't know how anybody can come into the board of elections, get a ballot with the wrong precinct when we generate the ballot. I've got a problem with that. So I'd like to, Mr. Directors, I'd like to look at those procedures for the future. Anybody else have any questions? Do we have the questions that Ms. Rose, Dora Rose raised? Do we
They're
have?
still polling.
We're still polling them?
For those categories that Ms. Rose did not, can we maybe address those? So there's B, C, F, and G, am I correct?
There's one absentee ballot question that I have from that list. There was one in category G.
Okay. Okay, so can the board take up B, C, and F?
Why don't we wait and we'll come back to the whole thing and let's move on. Right? I mean, does anybody else have any questions regarding the report? We are going to address those that Dora Rose has 19.
I would just like to say one other thing. I will be requesting the list of wrong precincts as well, because I think that might point to voter, to poll worker.
Who is this?
I'm interested in wrong precincts at the precinct and how so many of the voters who went to the polls got to the wrong precinct or were given the wrong precinct.
That.
I don't have that report in front of me.
Okay. But the wrong precinct for Cleveland was 867, and for the suburbs it was 1,639.
Right, and so I'm going to be looking at that report that you're looking at. I'd like to look that over because I also find that is the largest amount of rejections is wrong precinct and at the polls, and I think that might also point to poll worker training.
What I'd also like to do is ask the director to review every one of the wrong precincts, and the information that I would like to have is if the correct precinct was in the same voting location.
All right, bring up what you got, Senator Republican and Democrat.
I think, I think Ms. Eisner raises a very legitimate question. If somebody shows up at the right voting location,
Just give me what you got.
and somehow gets the wrong precinct ballot, then we have a problem at that voting location in directing, I think, the voter. And that is a pretty sizable number. Counting the absentee voters that I previously discussed, that totals 2,508. So if we could get that breakdown.
Yeah.
Right here. What's the next item on the agenda, Mr.?
There's just situation of possible double vote in the November 7th, 2006 general election. Mr. Jose, Borough